Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Happy Friday. I can't believe it's the weekend again. This week totally went so fast, right? I am back and I'm here to talk to you about some interesting stuff today. I just want to start out by saying that I love that you guys loved the last video that I did. I really wasn't sure if it would be controversial or how people would feel about it, but you guys were totally receptive and it is doing well, and a lot of people found out a lot of information they didn't previously know about Michael. So that's always good. I like to put out good information. It's very important, that I've been making these videos for probably going on 10 years, and my style has always been kind of different, but I do appreciate the growth and being able to better explain to you things and be more detailed. And I kind of don't want to drag this out in too much of a long series. These are just things that I wanted to say for years, but things that I definitely have a better understanding for now. So I want to be able to put them to you guys in a proper order. So thank you for the response. Thank you guys for liking and sharing the previous video. Continue to share it. The information is really good and it's going to keep things organized, starting at that kind of point. So that kind of segues me into the new video today, the next video, the new topic of discussion. So I have previously covered this in another video that I did that is now set to private on my channel. What's really cool about speaking, I'm a very verbal person and it's really important for me to be able to get my point across. I do, like doing the typing videos. I love doing the visuals, the pictures. I also like speaking. I like them both equally, but I think with me speaking, I'm better able to explain how I feel about things. I just discovered the closed caption option, so I did not know that was a thing before. So I do apologize if you've tried to watch previous videos of mine. Perhaps English is not your first language, or you're hearing impaired. So it's cool that I will have the closed caption selection ready for you guys so that you're able to watch the video and kind of know what I'm saying. So let's kind of get right into it. Again, this video is something that I've spoken about before, but never really gone into great detail. I think it's very interesting. And then basically, with new things that have come to light, it's always good to revisit things because things that may have previously not made much sense, they do make sense later. And I've noticed that with Michael, things that it's kind of like a puzzle and it's just about finding that missing piece. So I'm going to revisit this today. So we're going to be talking about today is Michael and the number 7. Now, as you guys know, Michael Jackson has always loved the number 7. That's something that has always been very visually obvious. With his clothing, things that he's worn, even some of his dance moves, he kind of mimics the number 7 in some of his moves. It's really cool. You have to be obviously it's visually, you can see if he's wearing a number 7 on his clothes, but when I did notice, oh my gosh, he actually is posing as a 7 when he's dancing. So he really loves number 7. So it kind of early on in the whole thing, there are other numbers too, but number 7 was like, wow, why is he so fixated on this number? What does this mean? And when I started to do my research on it, it was kind of incredible what I found out. So I want to kind of go over some very basic information about the number 7 first. I think it's important. A lot of you guys might know a lot of this stuff, but some of you might not. So I want to kind of go over it so you can get a better idea of how cool this number is, just generally speaking, not associated with Michael, just the number itself. So, some interesting facts about the number 7. In a biblical sense, 7 is a number of completeness and perfection, both physically and spiritually. It derives much of its meaning from being tied directly to God's creation of all things. In the book of Genesis, God creates everything in 7 days, the 7th day being the day of rest. So in the book of Genesis, all the different books and different verses about creation, Genesis being the beginning. So in a spiritual sense, 7 is simply the foundation of everything. The word created has 7 letters in it. And the beginning is with Genesis, which also has 7 letters. So Genesis has 7 letters, as well as created. So that's really interesting. It's just like, it's like divine numbers from the very beginning. Created, Genesis. So those both have 7 letters in it. In the Old Testament, there are 7 men of God mentioned, specifically Moses, David, Samuel, Shemaiah, Elijah, Elisha, and Igdaliah. I think that's how you say it. Igdaliah. I don't know, but that person. Okay, so in the book of Hebrews, written by the Apostle Paul, he uses 7 titles to refer to Jesus Christ. The titles are heir of all things, captain of our salvation, apostle, author of salvation, forerunner, high priest, and the author and finisher of our faith. Now in Matthew 13, Jesus is quoted as giving 7 parables. Parable is simply a story used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson. It's told by Jesus in the Gospels. So there are 7 parables. There is the parable of the sower, parable of the tares, parable of the mustard seed, parable of the leaven, parable of the hidden treasure, parable of the pearl, and parable of drawing in the net. So I will talk about those parables later. A couple of those kind of do factor into things with Michael, but I won't talk about that today. But it's interesting to note that there are a couple of parables on that list that directly tie to what I believe is the death hoax. So 7 Psalms are ascribed to David in the New Testament. In the book of Revelation, there are 7 churches, 7 angels to the 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpet plagues, 7 thunders, and the 7 last plagues. The first resurrection of the dead takes place at the 7th trumpet, completing salvation for the church. And also Jesus performed 7 miracles on God's holy Sabbath day. So if you are a 7 person, it's interesting. Let's say you're not, you like number 7, but you're not really, religious. It is interesting to note that the number 7 is also a huge factor in many scientific things, which I thought was really cool because a lot of people are not really religious. They don't really read the Bible. They're not very spiritual, and that's okay. I mean, everyone has their different way of seeing things. So if you let's say, I don't believe in that. Well, scientifically, 7's actually a big deal too. So basically, so in the rainbow, number 7 is very prominent. There's 7 colors in the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. There are 7 magic numbers in nuclear physics. These are 2, 8, 20, 28, 50, 82, and 126. They are the numbers of nucleons such that they are arranged into complete shells within the atomic nucleus. So if you're into like anything that's nuclear physics, it's just very interesting. I've read a little bit about it, so I would encourage you guys to look it up. It's really cool to see how that kind of factors in. So the maximum duration of the solar eclipse is about 7 minutes. An average person's eyes are approximately 7 centimeters apart from left to right. This is also the width between the side-by-side left eye and right eye camera used to record 3D movie pictures. Our body has 7 parts: the head, chest, abdomen, 2 legs, and 2 arms. The 7 gates of the human head is 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and of course, the mouth. You have 7 endocrine glands in the human body. We have 7 senses. And our voice is made into 7 different tones. So that's a lot of 7s. I mean, both scientifically and spiritually, that's a lot of 7s. So 7 is obviously a very prominent number in everyday life and existence. So that's really cool. I mean, that's really cool to kind of even fathom that, right? So of course there are other numbers of significance, some of which also pertain to Michael, but 7 is our focus for this particular subject. So it's to say that 7 is a big part of our life in general, whether it's spiritual or scientific, it's just very obvious, like that it is. It's not a coincidence. It's just a very big number in life. That has nothing to do with Michael itself. That's just what it is. So, as it pertains to Michael, while Michael obviously loved number 7, it's very much attributed to parts of his life that he had no direct control over. And that's something else interesting that I found out. Michael loved number 7, but there were things in his life that it very much was a part of his existence, and he had no control. It wasn't like he didn't choose that particular 7 path of the things that I'm speaking of. So let's get into that for a minute. So Catherine gave birth to 10 children. Of course, you guys know Marlon's twin died. She gave birth to 10 children, but she only had 9 pregnancies. And with all those 9 pregnancies, Michael was the 7th pregnancy. Because then after her comes, I don't know if I think it's her, then Randy, then Janet, I believe. I don't know. I always get confused between those two. But I just know Michael was the 7th pregnancy out of all the pregnancies, which is very interesting. Michael Jackson has 7 letters in the first name and 7 letters in the last name. So Michael, 7 letters, Jackson, 7 letters. So it's almost comical that the very foundation of his creation began with 7s also. It's comparing it to the story of the beginning and creation, how you have all these 7s, and then you take Michael Jackson and pretty much the core of who he is. You have these 7s. You have his first and last name. You have his birth order. It's just very interesting. So to kind of get away from that for a minute before I share some more things about Michael, it's said that we experience life in 7-year life cycles. And I'm not sure about that, but when doing some research, it seems to be very interesting, the things that happen during 7-year life cycles in Michael's life. So I'm not sure if it's true. I've done a little bit of research about the 7-year life cycle. You guys might want to look it up yourselves. It's very interesting to see how that kind of works, but I know in Michael's case it's very interesting. So to kind of start out, obviously we have the year Michael was born. So in August of 1965, before a show at Gary's Tiny Tots Jamboree held on Michael's 7th birthday, 7 years old, Evelyn LaHaye suggested the group rename themselves the Jackson 5 singing group. Later, of course, this was shortened to simply the Jackson 5, but that happened on Michael's 7th birthday. It was truly the beginning of Michael's musical legacy. I mean, he was singing before then, obviously, but that Jackson 5 name is kind of what set it all off. It was like truly the beginning of Michael's legacy as a singer. So that's when he was 70 years old. So 7 years later, in 1973, the year that Michael turned 14, he released his debut solo album, Got to Be There. So this is yet, another big milestone for Michael, as this was he was basically formally introduced to the world as a solo artist. So this is another huge milestone. He's 14 years old, another 7-year cycle. This huge thing happens. Oh, now he still was with his group, obviously, still with his brothers, but this is when he was formally introduced as a solo artist. 7 years later, 1979, the year that Michael turned 21 years old, came the major success and breakthrough of Off the Wall. Now, this album represented a departure from Motown in its sound in partnership with Quincy Jones and Epic Records. Michael had much more creative control and over his sound, and it transitioned him to a completely different category musically. He was no longer seen as a cute little kid, but a talented young man. Something else that's very interesting about this time in Michael's life, when he was 21, Michael penned himself a manifesto of all the things he was determined to become. This was leaked, I think, a couple of years ago, and it was really shocking to kind of read it, because it was like in his own words. He was 21 years old, and he had this list, a manifesto of things that he was like, okay, I'm going to do this. This is my goal. This is what I want to do. I'm going to actually have it right here. So it says, what he says exactly, quote it, MJ will be my new name, no more Michael Jackson. I want a whole new character, whole new look. I should be a totally different person. People should never think of me as the kid who sang ABC or I Want You Back. I should be a new, incredible actor, singer, dancer that will shock the world. I will do no interviews. I will be magic. I will be a perfectionist, a researcher, a trainer, a masterer. I will be better than every great actor roped into one. So let me reiterate this. I will be magic. I will be a perfectionist. I will be a researcher, a trainer, a masterer. Now, that's where this gets really incredible and really interesting. So you guys know in the last video, I read about Michael's natal chart, if you guys remember that. So we know that Michael's true sign is a Virgo, and all of this houses add up to him being an absolute perfectionist. We also learned that his birth house was Saturn, which means masterer, trainer, and disciplined. Wow. So did Michael have his natal chart read during this time? Was he into that stuff then? Was he talking to someone then? Or does this kind of prove that we truly follow our natal chart and our specified destiny? It makes you really think, like, did he know? Did he have his natal chart? Or is it just real? Like, is this legitimate? You know, we go through life and we have a path and we just kind of take it. So at the young age of 21, Michael was already feeling the need to transition into a different character, so to speak, to be someone else. Now, of course, we know that's natural for the spirit to want to do that when transitioning into a new 7-year cycle. But it's just interesting that he was having that itch. You know, he wanted to be something different, wanted to do something different. So 7 years later, in 1986, the year that Michael turned 28, was the year that he starred in Captain EO. The first time that we heard Another Part of Me, and this was also the year that Michael began to work on the Bad album. Now, Captain EO and Another Part of Me is a huge part of all of this grand design of Michael's life, which I will definitely get into in a completely different video. But just take note of something very, very crucial. This was the first sign of the public seeing Michael as a bit of an eccentric. And of course, with, Bad, we saw a completely different Michael Jackson altogether. His image was totally different. He just had this, he kind of shed the good boy image. He's like, I'm bad. I'm wearing leather and chains and eyeliner. He was just so different when he did Bad. This is very crucial. This is very important. And just keep that in mind for a later video. 7 years later, in 1993, is the year in which Michael turned 35. Now, this is when he was hit with the first sexual abuse allegations. This is when we really start to see things go wrong for Michael. Side note with that, keep this in mind. This is also the year that Michael did the beautiful and powerful halftime show. This is very, very significant, guys. And we'll discuss this again in a different time. But this is if you watch that performance, this is very, very significant in terms of alignment with, this is a year that things start to go wrong for Michael. This is a year that people start to really come against him. This is of the sexual allegations. It's incredible how he has his halftime show, but yet this is the same year he's accused of hurting children. But again, we'll get into that in a completely different video. So you want to stay tuned for that. It's very important. Okay, so 7 years later is the year 2000. This is the year which Michael turned 42. Now, this is the year we first begin to really see deeply disturbing issues with Sony. Okay, this is when we first start seeing him having there were things going on even before that with Sony. I know there are things on this timeline that you guys think I'm skipping over. I'm not skipping over anything. I just have to hit these points of this 7-year cycles. But I know about when his hair caught on fire. I know about all of those things. We will talk about those things separately at a different time. There will be breakdowns, but these are pivotal times that we have to talk about. So 2000, we know he had problems with Sony before 2000, but this is when we start to really see the relationship coming to an end. This is we're having problems. They were coming for him. He was speaking out against them. This is 2000 when Michael was 42. Now, something interesting that I want to read about the cycle, the life cycle, the 7-year cycle between the ages of 35 and 42. This was very interesting to me because I just turned 35. Oh God, I can't believe I just turned 35. I just turned 35 in January. So this is very interesting to read this. So from the 35th to the 42nd year, depending upon one's personality and what one's circumstances allow, we begin to feel a new restlessness. In some degree, a desire to share whatever one has gained through life with others. It comes to surface, this desire to want to share who you are, what you've learned. We start to see people who are very successful start building libraries and, building new businesses and reaching out to colleges and different arts things. What has been developed or realized can be taken to greater lengths, greater new heights during this period. This is almost like unfolding something, perhaps similar to the way a flower unfolds a bud that has been developing in earlier phases of its growth. This period is when we reassess the results of what we are doing externally in our life. Our relationships, careers, habits, and the ways we interact are all put under scrutiny and modified or changed. It's a time of facing up to what does and what doesn't satisfy us. So you start kind of like feeling like, what's going on? Like, what am I doing? Does this work for me? And I totally feel like that right now. So I believe that that's true because I just turned 35 and I definitely, like, out of nowhere, I'm doing a lot of cool things in my life and I'm seeing success, but I'm questioning what I'm doing. Like, am I wasting my time, or should I do more? Should I do less? It says you may reach heights of realization and creativity not touched previously. The profound breakthrough of one's innate genius that emerges around this time will no doubt be expressed in some degree. However, whatever is attained or realized will be enlarged and synthesized in later periods. At this time, you're about to enter the most creative period of your life. It's seen as a burst that opens in us that color all the years afterwards. But you need to be ready to burst like flowers do. They are green one moment and then suddenly burst into color. Guys, this is very significant. I'm going to read over this again to you guys later. I'm going to read this again because it's going to be very significant. It's something amazing that I found. But it's just very interesting. This is the time when Michael was going through this struggle with Sony. Like, he wanted more. He wanted something different. They were blocking him creatively. They were just messing with him. He was trying to expand as an artist. He was trying to do other things. They had him locked in, and he felt bullied by Tommy Mottola. He felt, I can't be myself. This is going to be very significant later. I know that I keep saying that, but it's just very important to remember that particular time in his life, that life cycle. He felt the color. He couldn't burst, and he wanted to. And he did, but we'll talk about that later. So moving on, 7 years later, in the year of 2007, at the age of 49, we see a side of Michael in many instances that were never presented to the public before. He seems honest, deep, and grown up in a way that is captivating and beautiful, but in some way very confusing. This is when Michael did the Jet magazine interview. And he was so confident in himself, and he was saying such strong things, and he was just himself. He came into his own, but there were you have that sense of him, and then there were other times where he was just so different. In many ways, like, you see what you get with him. Just Michael seemingly comfortable in his own skin and looking to be on top of the world at times. And you would see him and he would just look very defeated and unkempt, and it was really confusing. But this is what this time was for Michael. It was very interesting to see him. He seemed to be ready. He seemed ready to be back, ready to take his life in a new direction. He seemed very sure of that much. But of course, the next cycle he was never able to complete. He, quote unquote, allegedly died at the age of 50. which was the beginning of what was supposed to be the 8th cycle of his life. So this is where it gets very eerie, guys. It's very eerie. Michael had a transitional cycle every 7 years. 7 times. Again, 2008 should have been the beginning of the 7th year cycle in Michael's life. It was it's hard to think about. It's crazy. This was supposed to be the beginning of a 7-year cycle for him. He had just passed the 7th one. This would have been the 8th one. So with all the 7s, was it just Michael's fate to only see 7 of his life cycles? Was that what it was supposed to be because he had all these 7s already around him? Was he only supposed to see 7? You know, what if he decided to change that path, change his entire story? Did Michael know about his 7 cycles of 7? Is that why he seemingly, started to warn us about things early on? Is this what was going on when he was saying, this is it, this is it? Is that why he was saying, this is it? Did he know? Or did he purposely break his own cycle? Did he decide to break his own cycle himself? What is it? It's fascinating. It's something to ponder on. He had 7 of his 7-year cycles. It's very interesting. And it's something that we all need to think about. And I have so much more to share with you guys, and I know that I'm kind of like quiet right now, but it's a moment to think. It's a moment to ponder, because I have other things to share with you guys, but this is it for now as far as this goes with the 7s. This is big, guys. This is huge. These things, these patterns, nothing is by chance. Nothing is by chance that this would just suddenly stop. That fate wouldn't allow him to continue on to his 8th, 7th cycle. Why? Who stopped it? Did he stop it? Did fate stop it? Was it a combination of both? This is what we're going to study. This is what we're going to learn. But you guys have to understand that, yes, I am a death hoax believer. Very much. But it's not coming from a place of ignorance. It's not coming from a place of just wishful thinking. I have said many times, I was never a Michael Jackson fan when all of this started. I have nothing to gain by wishing or hoping that Michael is alive. I don't have anything to gain from that. This has just been something very on that it struck me because it never seemed right. It never made sense. And I'm a very deep thinker, and I always thought there was more to it than Michael just not wanting to be bothered anymore. I was like, there's something more to this. What is this? What is he doing? Why is it so important for him to kind of hold on? All these things are so purposeful. So that's why I am here, and that's why I'm here to explain these things to you guys. And I really, really hope that this video does not confuse you too much. Watch it a couple of times, listen to it a few times, really digest it. And I will have the next video out very soon. I'm going to get right into all of this. We're going to go way back, and we're going to really start at where the alignment starts. The destiny really starts. He was very controlling. When he was 21 years old, he had all these things he wanted to do, but then somewhere along the way, it fell out of destiny. It was a lot. So we will get into all that. We'll talk about all of that. But if you like this video and you want to watch the next one, please, subscribe to my channel. Enable all the notifications and like the video and share it. Share with everyone. And I will have a new video out very soon, probably this weekend, maybe not. We'll see. But I want to have it out to you guys as soon as possible because we can keep the momentum going. If you have any questions, sound off in the comments below. I will answer them for you. Just even if you're not a believer, just keep an open mind and really think about what I've said in this video. How this is not something that I made up myself. this is what it is. This is the path. What does it all mean? Where is it taking us? Please stay tuned to find out. And thank you guys for listening to me. Take care. Good night.